Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
Somewhere Else and Back Again by Zenithofthestars. After finding the One Piece, Luffy and Nami are separated from the crew and thrust into another world. 16 years have passed, and they find themselves back in their own home again. But what is waiting for them when they return? Adios.
The Thousand Sunny had traveled to all the islands that had been in range of the storm. It had been nearly a month since they lost Milo, and Nami was getting more worried with each passing day. Even Zoro, who barely knew him, was starting to get concerned. Luffy looked ready to destroy something if he didn't get answers soon. Where the hell was Milo? Belmere was unusually quiet, sitting beside Kuina and allowing her to play with her hair. She was worried about her brother too. "Hey," Zoro spoke up from the lookout tower, breaking the tense silence. "I see an island," he pointed starboard. "Should we try it?" Luffy asked, his face neutral. Nami bit her lip, nodding. "We should." She turned the wheel, the wind catching the sails, and they began turning. They didn't bother sailing behind the island and walking to any civilization this time. Enough people knew of their return, and there wasn't a marine base near the docks. Like every other island, the harbor cleared of civilians as soon as they were sighted. There were several workers left, looking nervous as they started securing the ship to the dock. One of them let out a whimper as Luffy jumped down and looked in their direction. "Hey," he started, pulling out the picture. "Have you seen this person?" Luffy held out the picture, waiting for someone to look at it. One man did, stepping forward and taking the paper from Luffy's hand. He stared down at the picture, frowning. "Who is this?" he asked. "My son," Luffy said. "Have you seen him? Your son?" the dock worker exclaimed, looking down at the smiling boy in the picture. Well, I have." Nami, who was leaning over the railing and listening, let out a startled gasp, throwing over the rope ladder and descending as fast as she could. "You've seen him?" she demanded. "Why yes," the worker answered, stuttering as Nami advanced. "He was on another ship. The Whitebeard pirates. He was with them." "He was with Marco?" Luffy asked. The worker nodded frantically. "Yes. He seemed to be traveling with them." "Did he say anything?" Nami demanded, stalking forward and grabbing the man's collar. He shook his head. "No, I didn't talk to him, I swear." Luffy put a hand on Nami's shoulder. "Did he look all right?" Luffy asked. The worker paused, and then nodded. He looked happy. Nami laughed, releasing the worker and falling to her knees. "Thank God, he's all right." Luffy helped her to her feet, the two of them smiling. "Is he still here? Or did he leave with them?" she asked, holding onto Luffy as her legs stopped shaking. "I don't know," the worker admitted. "I went home before the Whitebeard pirates left, so I didn't see if he got back on or not." Luffy nodded. "Thanks for your help." The worker backed off, joining the others and vanishing from their sight. Nami leaned into Luffy, taking deep breaths and letting her worry vanish. Luffy wrapped his arms around her, laughing. "He'll be fine with Marco," Luffy said. "We can keep looking for the rest of the crew." "We're still going to find him," Nami said stiffly. Luffy nodded, "Of course. But this will be good for him. Being on his own, he'll gain some independence." "I suppose you're right," Nami nodded. "Should we keep going or stock up while we're here?" "Let's get supplies," Luffy decided. "Zoro's been going crazy without any sake." "It's his own damn fault we're out of it," Nami muttered. "Oi, Zoro. We're going into town for supplies. If you want any booze you have to get it yourself." The passenger ship had dropped off the Nico family, as well as the other worlders and anyone else who chose this island to exit on. It wasn't as large as the island Blake had been living on before, but it was busy, with people bustling about. Blake stuck close to Robin, this being the first time away from the island he was born on. Tom, however, was off with Frankie, heading towards the docks to speak with the shipwrights. Simon looked around warily, keeping hold of Tim, who in turn looked annoyed. They had been on the ship for several weeks, and everyone was stir-crazy. It made Frankie miss the Sunny and its speed. The passenger ship barely made 5 knots on a good day. Andy, not having any parents to hold him back, ran off, after complaining about the ship and missing land. Simon had tried to hold him back, but he disappeared before Simon could grab him. Don't worry, Robin said, her eyes closed, he's fine. And how would you know that? Simon asked, mildly curious and annoyed. Robin ignored the question, glancing around the market. I wonder if they have a bookshop here. She mused. Blake brightening at the idea. She closed her eyes again, before turning to the left. There's one this way. Tim turned to Blake. How does she know? Mom's got a devil fruit ability. Blake shrugged, running to catch up. He caught up a moment later, Robin having paused. There's a commotion at the docks, she said, watching as people scrambled over the top of the hill. I wonder what's going on. She began walking forward against the crowd. Are you insane? Someone shouted, as she swerved to avoid her. Get out of here. What's wrong? Robin asked. The Pirate King is down there, the stranger waved her arms. He's going to kill us all. That might be an exaggeration, Robin said, looking to the top of the hill. Is the Pirate King really here? She asked the woman, but she was gone. The Pirate King, Blake said. Luffy? Robin smiled. I hope so. She continued walking, ignoring the warnings others were throwing her way. Frankie walked along the beach, wondering why the docks looked so empty. He could only see a small portion, but these docks were supposed to be bigger than the ones on the other side of the island, where they were dropped off by the passenger ship. Bigger meant more people, so where were they? Tom was a distance in front of him, looking excited at the prospect of seeing new and bigger ships. Hey Dad, Tom called back, shoving his hair out of his face. The docks are empty. Is that normal? No, it isn't, Frankie called back. What do you see? There's a pirate ship. Could that be the cause? Frankie jogged the rest of the way to his oldest son, his jaw dropping when he saw the ship Tom was referring to. That. It's a really good ship, Tom continued. Although, there's a hole in the one side. I wonder what the pirates could have been doing to cause that. Do you think they were caught in the storm? Frankie didn't respond. His eyes glued to the ship. Dad? That's the Thousand Sunny, Frankie exclaimed. He laughed, slamming his forearms together. That's the Super Sunny. He started running, leaving his son on the beach. Dad, Tom called. Dad, wait, Frankie skidded to a halt in front of the ship, his eyes sparkling. It is the Sunny. He pressed his hands against the wood. Oh how I've missed you. He rubbed his cheek against the wood, looking content. Tom blinked, not sure what to make of his father's actions. Hey, a worker approached them. I wouldn't touch that ship, he warned. It belongs to the Pirate King. I know, Frankie laughed, climbing aboard. The worker turned to Tom. If that's your father, I suggest getting him off that ship and get the hell out of here. Straw Hat was already in a bad mood when he docked. Tom looked up at the ship, where Frankie was gleefully prancing around on the grass. This is Pirate King Luffy's ship? Yeah, Dad built this ship. I think he'll be okay, Tom replied. The worker blanched. Built it? Tom nodded, as they heard Frankie shout, Zoro, and then, Tom, get up here. Tom gave a little wave to the worker and climbed up the rope ladder, joining his father on deck. The cyborg had a green-haired man trapped in an embrace, and a girl about his age was off to the side, laughing at the trapped man. Another girl, this one younger and wearing a straw hat, was also laughing. Tom had to admit, the expression on the green-haired man's face was awfully funny. Put me down, the green-haired man Tom assumed to be Zoro demanded. But I missed you, Frankie whined, sounding, yeah, okay. I missed you too. Zoro managed to free an arm and hit Frankie upside the head. Frankie didn't seem to feel it, as he only tightened his hold. Zoro grimaced, looking around at the three others on board. A little help would be nice. Come on, Dad, the dark-haired teenager said, wiping away tears. Be nice, your friend misses you. The younger girl kept laughing. After a minute more of struggling, Tom took pity on the pirate. Dad, you might want to let him go. Frankie blinked and released his hold, allowing Zoro to drop to the ground. Frankie had tears welling up in his eyes as he looked down at his friend. "Waaa," he cried, it's so good to see you, you're okay. Hey, yeah, I'm okay. You're looking okay too, Zoro nodded towards Tom. That your kid? Frankie nodded, gesturing to Kuina. She yours? Hey, yep. There was a moment of silence. Who's that? Frankie nodded at Belmere. I'm Belmere, Belmere said, pulling the hat down over her eyes in a sudden bout of shyness. She's Luffy and Nami's daughter, Zoro elaborated. They're out getting supplies. Frankie paused. You said, Luffy and Nami's daughter, right? Zoro nodded. As in, Luffy and Nami. Zoro nodded again. They're together? Zoro nodded. Frankie looked shocked. I never knew Nami could love people. I thought she only cared about money. Zoro snorted, then doubled over, laughing. Don't let her catch you saying that. Frankie looked terrified at the thought. Zoro kept laughing. Then Frankie started laughing. The two friends had to lean against each other as their laughter made their knees go weak. Kuina stared at the two men, their faces red. I'm Kuina, she introduced to the blue-haired teenager. Tom, he replied. Robin and Blake arrived at the top of the hill, staring down at the Thousand Sunny with a smile. Simon froze at the sight. That was the ship Luffy left on, he said, as Tim stopped beside him. I wonder if Milo's there, he wondered aloud. Milo? A very familiar voice repeated. Robin turned, coming face to face with someone she thought she'd never see again. Nami? Robin asked, and the orange-haired woman broke out into a grin, dropping the bags she was carrying and pulled Robin into a hug. Robin, she squealed, tightening her grip. Robin laughed, hugging the younger pirate back. Simon and Tim took a couple steps back, giving the two women room. It's so good to see you, Robin said. I read about you in the paper, but that's not as good as seeing you in person. She pulled back, their arms still clasped. How have you been? I read about children. Too, Nami grinned, and then noticed Simon. What are you doing here? Waiting for the nest ship to take us to. Well, I have no idea where we're going. Simon shrugged. Nami turned her attention back to Robin. One of your children, his name is Milo, correct? Robin asked. Simon's son told me. Nami nodded, Milo and Belmere. Milo's not actually on the ship right now. He's with Marco and the Whitebeards. Why is he with them? Robin asked, as Luffy came into view, rounding a corner. He might have fallen off the ship. Nami scratched the back of her head sheepishly. But Marco picked him up. Actually, we found out earlier today he was with them. He's fine. Well, it will be a while before I can meet him then, she turned to Blake. Sorry, Blake. You'll have to put up with Tom. Is that your son? Nami asked, looking over at Blake. It's nice to meet you. Blake started. You too, I'm Blake. Luffy, Robin said, releasing Nami to hug her captain, despite the bags piled in his arms. Robin. Luffy returned. It's you? We can finish the reunions on the ship, Nami said, picking up the bags she had discarded. I think Frankie's there, she added, looking down the hill. Frankie, Luffy exclaimed. Awesome, let's go, we're up 2 more members. I can't wait to see everyone else. Milo was sitting in the crow's nest, bored. He didn't mind lookout duty, but nothing interesting ever happened while he was on watch. Nothing but blue water and sky, on most days. Today was different though, a thick fog surrounding the ship. Izo, who was also on watch, predicted it would clear up in the afternoon. Izo caught Milo's eye when he looked down, raising his hands and silently asking if he had seen anything. Milo shook his head, sighing and drumming his fingers on the wood. It was times like these, when he had time to think, that he missed his parents and his home. It had been over 2 months since he was separated from them. Want some company? Milo jumped at the sudden noise, turning and coming face to face with Namur, the 8th Division commander. That would be welcome, he said, nodding. Namur climbed the rest of the way into the crow's nest, making himself comfortable before speaking again. What are you thinking about? My parents, I guess, Milo said, his eyes on the gray water, scanning the edge of the fog. I still haven't seen their ship. That's why Marco put you on watch duty, Namur laughed. Milo nodded, I guessed as much. I spent more time watching the water than I did cleaning. It does get boring though. Namur nodded in agreement. You never talk about your family. Yeah, Dad told me not to use his name, Milo admitted, and he trailed off. And you're loyal to him, Namur finished. That's the reason you haven't accepted Marco's offer. That's one reason, Milo said. I'm not strong. I don't know how to fight. I already feel like a burden just being on your ship. Namur raised an eyebrow at Milo's confession. You know, we once took in someone who constantly tried to kill the captain. Milo snorted, you're kidding. Namur shook his head. I'm not. He was on the ship 100 days before joining the crew. And you still let him? Of course, Namur said. He grew on the crew. He could have joined in the first month, but he had pride issues. Wasn't anyone concerned about your captain? Nah. Namur waved a webbed hand dismissively. Pops could take care of himself. And then he joined the crew, Milo mused, thinking about the possibility. He became 2nd Division Commander, Namur said quietly, his eyes darkening slightly. Milo didn't say anything. He knew the position of 2nd Division Commander was empty. They were silent for a while, Milo staring out at the ocean. Suddenly he frowned, leaning out. Towards the port side there was a dark shape moving in the fog. Hey, Izo! Milo shouted, catching his attention. Port. Izo, and everyone who heard him, turned port. Just in time to see a large marine warship emerge from the fog. Milo ducked as a cannon shot sounded, the ball flying over his head. He didn't protest when Namur grabbed him and jumped over the side of the crow's nest. He landed hard, releasing Milo, who darted to the hold. It was his job to stock the cannons. Before he could make it to the door though, a huge man landed in front of him, having jumped from the rapidly approaching marine ship. Had it been 2 months earlier, Milo would have gawked. But he was used to the inhuman feats the people of this world were capable of. You look new, he jeered, leaning down. Milo took a step back, taking in the marine's face. He had gray hair and gray stubble, looking very old. Who are you? The marine was knocked over by a flaming foot, courtesy of Marco, who saw the marine land on their ship. There was a jolt as the two ships collided, Milo falling to the ground, sprawled in the same position as the old marine. He was younger though, and scrambled into a sitting position before the marine started moving. Ow, the old marine moaned, finally sitting up. That hurt. I thought I asked you to be gentle with me, Marco. You know him? Milo asked, standing and using the wall for support as the ship stopped rocking. He's an acquaintance, Marco said, standing back as the old man clambered to his feet. His name's Garp. Milo looked between the two crews, who were standing around. Aren't you two enemies? You are new, Garp laughed. I'm Anarcho explained. If we were to go down, there would be chaos in the seas. I refuse to become a warlord, so the Marines have to apprehend us, if they can. Garp kept laughing. We have to put on a show, he simplified. The seas would become uncontrollable, and there would be more fights over territory and such. It's easier to keep them in power, but we can't admit it. Our pride as Marines won't allow alliances. Milo ran a hand over his face. Wow, this place is weird. Marco tossed something at Milo, who caught it. Try fighting this time. Marco had handed Milo a silver pole. There was a small button in the middle, and when Milo pressed it the sides extended until it was as long as his body. What's this? A weapon, Marco said. I want you in this crew, and that means you're going to have to know how to fight. You want me to fight? He asked, incredulous. No one here will kill you, Marco assured, Garp nodding in agreement. It will be good practice. Milo spluttered, staring at the pole in his hands. I don't know how to fight. That's why you need practice. Just try it, Marco encouraged. He tried swinging it around, earning a few laughs from both the Whitebeard pirates and the Marines. He reddened, but ignored them. If he could learn how to fight, he might impress his father. His father didn't care much about appearances, but Milo did. His father was the king of the pirates here, and that made him feel small. He swung it again, before leaping at the nearest Marine, bringing his pole down hard. It hit his shoulder, sending the Marine crumpling to the wooden deck, who pretended to cry out dramatically and die. A loud cheer went up from the Whitebeard pirates. Garp laughed. Well then, shall we start? There was no clear answer, but the pirates and Marines began fighting. Milo twisted through the crowd, ending up at the railing and watching the fight. It looked serious, but now that Milo knew it was an act he could see subtle actions that indicated it wasn't. A Marine knocked to the ground but not killed. A pirate conversing with a Marine as they clashed. Someone telling a joke. And I thought my family was weird, Milo muttered. He watched Garp emerge from the fight, coming to stand beside him. I wish you could have met mine, Garp laughed. My son was a revolutionary, and my grandson was a pirate. Both my parents are pirates, Milo said, and I didn't know until recently. Garp patted Milo on the head, shaking his head. You have potential, kid. What's your name? Milo answered. Hey, good name, he commented. You look like my grandson. I don't know your grandson. I'm not from around here, so I don't know a lot of people. Where are you from, then? Garp asked. And who are your parent? You said they were pirates. Do they have bounties? I was born in New York, Milo answered. Very far away, and I can't tell you who my parents are. Shame, Garo said. I could have passed on a message if I saw them. Milo shrugged, watching the battle progress. So, why do you put up a fight like this? I understand alliances, well, truces. Garp sighed. It's a long story. But we now know that pirates are just as important as Marines in keeping the peace. I retired as a vice admiral, but I'm still a captain, so I have to follow Marine regulations. But since I don't believe in the actions the Marines are taking anymore, I just do things my own way. I trust my crew not to say anything. Milo nodded in understanding. After a few minutes, Garp shook his head. We could be doing better things right now, he muttered. Full retreat. The fighting ceased, the Marines filing back to their ship. Marco stood at the rail. See you again, he called, waving. You guys are insane, Milo told him seriously, pressing the small button again, the pull shrinking. Milo held it out, but Marco waved him off. Keep it. I gave it to you. Milo sighed. You know absolutely nothing about me, and yet you still want me in the crew. Why? You remind me of an old friend, Marco said, and besides, you have potential. Garp said the exact same thing, Milo told him. Said I remind him of his grandson. Marco raised an eyebrow. Well then, we were talking about the same person. My friend is his grandson. Who? Monkey D. Luffy, the Pirate King. Marco said. You and him are remarkably similar. Except your eyes. He had darker eyes, and yours are brown. Milo said, biting his lip and debating on telling him or not. Marco turned away and began giving orders, so Milo kept his mouth shut. Garp held out the picture someone on his ship had managed to take of the Whitebeard pirate's newest crew member, even if he insisted he wasn't part of the crew. He frowned at the boy in the picture, Milo. There was a really strong resemblance to his grandson, and according to Gadding and Figs, Luffy had returned. Garp gritted his teeth as he handed the picture to the other Marine in the room. How high should his bounty be? Garp's subordinate asked. The question brought Garp out of his musings. 20 million, he answered, returning to his thoughts. Isn't that a bit high? He did attack an officer, Garp pointed out. The Marine shrugged and began making the poster. Have you seen Gadding around? I thought he arrived yesterday. I think he's in the barracks, the Marine said, handing back the picture. I'll send the posters out with tomorrow's newspaper. Garp nodded, folding the picture and sticking it in his pocket before leaving the room. Gadding! Garp shouted as he tore open the door to the higher officials' barracks. I need to talk to you. A figure rose from one of the beds. What ya want? Sabaody Archipelago. Garp got straight to the point. You put in your report Straw Hat Luffy had returned. Are you sure it was Luffy you saw? I've already told you, Gadding sighed. It was him. His arms stretched and he had the hat. Was there anything else? Something you forgot to mention in your report? Other people with him? Gadding shook his head. There was a woman and a little girl, and they were in my report, he told Garp. A wife and daughter, according to Figs. I didn't see anyone else with him. Are you? I'm positive, Gadding shouted, cutting him off and grabbing Garp's shoulders, shaking him. I only saw a woman and a little girl. If there was anyone else with them, they weren't there. Ask Figs if you want anything else. He was with them longer. Garp sighed, thinking of his grandson. How does he come back from the dead? He might not have been dead, Gadding said. We only assumed. He could have been in hiding. Garp shook his head. He would have written to me if he was in hiding. He would have somehow assured me he was okay. He's a pirate, Gadding said, talking slowly as if to ensure Garp understood the fact. He doesn't care. Garp paused, silent for a minute. Then he said, you do realize the reason he has such a high bounty is because he's willing to go to any lengths to protect the people he cares about, right? Robin was in a great mood. Currently, she was sitting on the deck of the Thousand Sunny, watching Frankie try to strangle Luffy while crying and shouting nonsense. They're quite lively, are they not? Robin asked Nami. Nami just sighed. They're going to draw even more attention to us if they don't shut up. Then we'd have to get out of here. Should we stop them? Nami shook her head. It's all right, they miss each other. I think you're right about us getting out of here, Robin said. The sooner the better. The ship we were traveling on before was carrying people associated with the Marines. Yeah, Simon and the others, Nami said. They came with us from the other world, although I suppose you already know this. I warned them not to mention Luffy and me a while ago. They probably know who we are now, so I don't think they'll be talking. Is that why Mr. Simon left so fast? Probably. A loud thump caught the attention of both women. They looked over to the boys, watching as Luffy managed to hit Frankie upside the head and Frankie fall to the deck. Belmir's eyes were shining. Are they gonna fight? She asked excitedly. Your daughter is quite violent, Robin commented. She's just like you. I know, Nami gushed. Isn't it wonderful? Hey, Zoro's voice echoed down from the lookout tower. First see Marine ships. We should set sail, then, Luffy said, tapping the unconscious shipwright with his foot. Oi, Frankie. Wake up, Frankie groaned, but rose. We have to get out of here, Luffy continued, fast. Frankie's eyes lit up. Roger, he saluted, and then vanished below the deck. Everyone, Robin warned. You had better hold on. What's gonna happen? Belmir asked. Nami grinned, we're going to fly. Frankie reappeared on deck, taking his designated place at the helm and maneuvering away from the dock. They started sailing towards the Marine ships, probably here because the pirates were sighted. The ship was vibrating, the cola engines already powering up and waiting to be used. Luffy stood at the bow. Nami stepping up beside him and Belmir holding onto her father's hand. Tom was standing beside Frankie, watching him work, and Blake stayed by Robin. Kuina was coming down the ladder to the lookout tower, excited. There were shouts from the Marine ship, but Frankie was ready. He pulled a lever and grinned. Kuda burst. He shouted as the ship rocketed from the water, soaring over the Marine ships. The children were screaming, but after the initial shock wore off, they began laughing. They landed a minute later, far enough away from the Marines. All 4 children stumbled as the ship hit the water, not used to the impact. All right, Luffy shouted, jumping up onto the figurehead. He pointed forward, let's go. Simon, Tim, Andy, and several others from New York watched the ship fly off into the distance. Wow, was the only word they were able to muster out. It's cold, Milo complained, shivering. He looked up as snow began to fall. It's a winter island, Haruta pointed out. It's still cold, Milo muttered, wrapping his arms around himself. Despite the cold, the island was a sight to behold. It was white, and in the distance there was tall, drum-shaped mountains rising up and disappearing into the cloud cover. They sailed closer, and Milo could make out people gathered around a small bay. He turned when he heard footsteps behind him, and got a face full of cloth. He tore the imposing fabric away, revealing it to be a coat. You might want to put that on, Marco said, walking over to the helm and began giving directions to the one steering. Gratefully, Milo pulled on the coat, relishing in the warmth. Less than 5 minutes later, the ship had dropped anchor in the small cove, barely large enough to fit it. Marco hadn't bothered putting on warm clothing, and had jumped over the side to speak with a large person wearing an equally large green coat. That's Dalton, Haruta said. He's a friend, and removed this kingdom from the world government. What does that mean? It means, this place is safe for pirates. Like us. This place is under the Pirate King's protection though, so no other crews are willing to attack. Even though the Pirate King is dead, the doctor on his ship lives here. Haruta pointed to the small creature standing next to the massive man in green. That's Chopper, she said, he's the best. Is he human? Milo asked, eyeing up the small creature. Haruta laughed. No, he's a reindeer. A bit small for a reindeer, isn't he? Don't let him hear you say that, Haruta warned. He could kick your ass, and then patch you back up and kick it again. Milo shuddered, not replying. Come on. Haruta grabbed Milo's arm and pulled him over the side, landing in a spray of snow. There aren't many winter islands on this side of the Grand Line. Let's build a snowman. Milo felt immature, but he went along with it. Staying on the ship would have been boring anyway. They were joined later by several members of the 12th Division. It was when Henry threw the first snowball that the fight began. Milo ducked behind one of the snowmen for cover, not willing to get hit by a snowball thrown by someone with inhuman strength. He saw an opening in the crowd, and he leapt toward the trees and better cover. He ducked behind a tree, which was stronger than a snowman, and caught his breath. His arm was tired from hurtling snow. He rubbed his sore shoulder, glancing to the side when he saw movement out of the corner of his eye. It was the reindeer doctor, his arms braced against the tree and glaring suspiciously. Reindeer yelped, darting back. "Who are you? I've never seen you before." "I came with Marco's ship," Milo said, raising his hands, showing he meant no harm. The reindeer came a bit closer, still eyeing him suspiciously. "So you're a white-beard pirate?" Milo shook his head. "No, I'm just traveling with them. My name is Milo. Haruta said your name was Chopper, right?" Chopper nodded slowly closing the distance between them and began poking him. "You're a pirate though, right?" Milo shrugged. "I guess. Wasn't raised as one though." "Me neither," Chopper said. "I'm a doctor." Milo nodded. "Haruta said you were a great one." The reindeer broke out in a grin. "Saying I'm great won't make me happy, you asshole." Milo raised an eyebrow, but didn't comment. Haruta was in his sight, and Milo scooped up a handful of snow, packing it tightly. "What are you doing?" Chopper asked. "Getting in a hit," Milo grinned. "I'm not inhumanly strong like everyone else. I need to use strategy to beat them." He aimed, bringing his arm back and hurtling it forward, hitting Haruta directly in the back of the head. "Oh, shit." Haruta had turned toward him, her eyes full of fury. "Run!" He took off, not wanting to face Haruta's wrath. Chopper was keeping up with him, and then he transformed, looking more like a reindeer than before and running on all four legs. The sudden change caused Milo to stumble. "Get on," Chopper said, and Milo didn't complain, jumping onto his back and holding onto his neck. "Cheater!" Haruta shouted, as Chopper put distance between them. Chopper stopped a few minutes later, as they reached the village, and the two of them collapsed in the snow, laughing. Marco and Dalton had been walking down the road when the pair emerged from the trees. Dalton laughed at the sight, while Marco sighed. "What did you do?" Milo rolled over and pushed himself up, resting on his elbows. "I hit Haruta with a snowball." Marco shook his head, a smile crossing his face. "You have to deal with the consequences, Chopper." Marco acknowledged the reindeer. "I see you've met Milo. How are you?" "Great, Milo's nice. And he smells good." The little reindeer had transformed again, into his smaller size. "How's your wound doing?" Chopper had taken on a serious expression, walking up to the pirate. Marco rubbed his shoulder. "It's doing better," he told Chopper. "Really, I haven't been pushing it." "You were hurt?" Milo stood, brushing snow from his coat. "He was being reckless," Chopper corrected. "He was lucky he wasn't far from here. You might have lost your arm if that infection had gotten worse." Marco looked embarrassed. "It was a stupid mistake. I let my guard down. We were fighting Marines, and one of them nicked me with a sword. I thought you and the Marines were, well, not friends, but..." Milo trailed off, gesturing uselessly with his arms to get his point across. "That's just with Garp and his crew," Marco said. "Other Marines, not so much." Milo groaned. "I'm never going to understand," he muttered. Dalton was eyeing him curiously. "You weren't here last time Marco stopped by." "He's the newest member," Marco said. "I haven't joined yet," Milo elaborated. "I just want to find my parents." Dalton nodded, taking both explanations. "How soon do you plan to head out?" "As soon as we can," Marco said. "I have a bad feeling, and I want to be on the water as soon as possible." Dalton nodded again, calling out to several people as he walked away. Marco looked over at Milo and Chopper, who were talking. "Milo, since you're here, could you help carry supplies?" Milo looked up, nodding. "I'll help too," Chopper said. Milo was handed several bags, and he followed Dalton through the snow and back to the ship. He ducked behind the larger man when Haruta came into sight, relaxing when they got on the ship. There were 4 more trips before everything Marco had bought was loaded, and during the 3rd trip, Haruta had spotted Milo and tackled him to the ground. Marco had to pull her off of him. Finally, they were ready to go. Chopper had forced Marco to sit down so he could examine the remains of his wound before he let them cast off. "It was nice meeting you, Chopper," Milo said, as Chopper prepared to leave. Chopper smiled. "You're nice," he told Milo. "I want to see you again. Are you going to stay with Marco?" "I don't know," Milo said. The only reason I agreed to come with him in the first place was because I fell off the ship I was on and landed on an uninhabited island. I was just going to travel with him until I found my parents' ship." Chopper's face fell. "Will you still visit?" "Of course," Milo said. "You don't seem to mind pirates, so I'll ask my parents to stop by." Chopper's sad expression changed. "Promise?" Milo nodded. Following this, Chopper left the room and walked outside, jumping up onto the railing. "Goodbye," he said, jumping off. The Moby 2 cast off, sailing out of the bay. Milo waved from the rail until Haruta jumped him again, dragging him away from Chopper's view. "Chopper," Dalton said as the ship sailed further away, "you aren't usually this friendly with strangers. Why was he different?" "He smelled nice," Chopper said, "and he was nice." "What did he smell like?" "He smelled like Luffy," Chopper answered. Chopper sat on the snowbank, watching the ship until it vanished from his sight. After Haruta dragged Milo off, Marco sent Namur to rescue him. Milo wasn't strong enough yet to put up with what she would do to him. Namur came back with Haruta slung over his shoulder, shouting, and Milo trailing behind, looking relieved. Marco smiled at the trio, but when he turned away, a frown crossed his face. He still had a bad feeling, and having water surrounding them wasn't helping that twisting in his gut. No one else seemed worried, many of them trying to get into the sake they just picked up. He walked away, climbing up to the crow's nest and looking around. He froze suddenly, the sky becoming brighter, despite the sun and clear sky. He jumped down and circled the ship, but no matter where he went, the brightness continued to increase. He arrived back at the bow, where Milo was standing. He had a strange expression on his face, a mix between confusion and disbelief. "No way," Milo muttered. He pressed a hand to his chest and looked even more confused for a minute, but then dropped his hand and nodded to Marco. "Do you know what's going on?" Marco asked him. By now, others were beginning to notice the strange glow around them. I think," Milo said. "I wasn't outside last time, but when Mom opened the door it was all white. It's the same, I think." Milo was stuttering, looking nervous. Marco put a hand on his shoulder. "I said you're welcome to keep your secrets unless it harms the crew. Right now, I feel like the crew is in danger." Milo nodded. "I wasn't born in this world," he said. Marco was taken aback. "What? I was born in another world," Milo repeated. "It sounds crazy, but it's true. We came to this one by accident. I was inside when it started, but when we looked outside, everything was white. Just like the sky is now." Marco looked up, the sky continuing to get brighter, almost white. A distinct ring was forming and starting to descend. Another world. Milo nodded. "I'm almost sure this is the same thing. I have no idea what's going on, but..." "Will it hurt anyone?" Marco demanded. "Is that a threat?" He pointed up at the ring. Milo paused. "No, it won't hurt anyone. Bumpy landing, but that's it. If we end up in New York, or anywhere in my world, we'll be okay." Marco gritted his teeth, looking around at the crew. "Everyone hold on tight. Milo, is there any way to avoid it?" "I don't know," Milo answered truthfully. Marco grimaced. "Hold on." He repeated his order. "I don't know what's going to happen." He turned to Milo. "I expect a full explanation after this." Yeah, Milo didn't like the expression Marco was giving him. The ship was in trouble, and Milo felt guilty. He grabbed onto the rail until his knuckled G as Marco started shouting orders, preparing to outrun the light. "Is it following me?" The sudden thought startled him. Had this happened to his parents? Probably not. They were from this world. But he wasn't. Neither was Belmir. Was this happening to her too? The ship lurched forward as they began to pick up speed. Unfortunately, they weren't fast enough, and the ring of white descended on them. Milo squeezed his eyes shut as a fierce howling roared in his ears, and he held on. Then suddenly, almost as abruptly as it started, everything stopped. The light faded from behind Milo's eyelids, and he cracked open an eye, looking around. There wasn't an aftershock, he mused, releasing the railing and looking around. There was only ocean when he looked out, but when he turned around, there was New York. The cityscape was impossible to miss, the buildings rising taller than he had seen on any island they landed on. Marco narrowed his eyes at him. "Milo, where are we?" "Welcome to New York," Milo said. "This is where I was born." Police Chief Calvin Webster was hoping to have a relaxing day. The day before they had busted a drug dealer, and Webster was up into the early hours of the morning filling out paperwork. He was sitting with his feet on the desk, eating chips. That was when he got the call. "Hello?" Webster placed his feet on the floor as he picked up the phone. The other officers in the room heard frantic jabbering on the other end of the line, and then watched as his eyes went wide. "What?" Webster slammed the phone back onto its cradle. "Keep working," he told the others before rushing out the door. He sprinted to his car, jumping in and driving as fast as the speed limit would allow. By the time he arrived at the waterfront, it was crowded with people. He had to park a few streets down and shove his way through the crowd. He was stopped when he reached a barrier set up to keep people back, but was let through when he flashed his badge. The docks were crowded, full of other police officers and the Coast Guard. Many of them were staring at the ocean. He looked over as well, following their gaze and seeing the reason he was called. A large ship was floating a couple of miles offshore. "What happened?" Webster demanded, and was pointed in the direction of the head Coast Guard. He repeated the question. There was a flash of light, the head Coast Guard told Webster. "We first thought it was just lightning, but then that ship appeared." He gestured in the direction of the water. It was the same way the high school disappeared. The same energy was dispersed, according to the scientists. "So, you think it's the same phenomenon?" Webster asked, rubbing his eyes. "Well," the head Coast Guard looked over his shoulder, "they seem to think so." Webster let his gaze travel up and down the docks until it landed on a group of lab coats crowded around a folding table, which was covered in equipment. "Is there any plan to search the ship, or talk to the people on board?" "Yes," the head Coast Guard said. "You, me, and a couple others are going. We have confirmed there are people on board." "Are you sure it's safe to approach them?" Webster asked, as he was led towards a motorboat. "Who knows?" the head Coast Guard replied. "We don't even know if they speak our language." "It's not safe to send a helicopter, that's for sure," someone else laughed, came back with a scorch mark. "So you're going to send people?" The scientists believed the only reason they attacked the helicopter was because they've never seen one before. "We probably should have realized that earlier, considering the ship is made of wood and has no engine. They might have thought it was a threat." The Coast Guard climbed into the boat. "If we send people, they might realize we don't mean any harm." "Might," Webster repeated under his breath, but climbed in after the head Coast Guard anyway. It was a relatively short journey, everyone growing cautious as the motorboat slowed down as they neared the large ship. The head Coast Guard, who introduced himself as Matthew Book, explained what had happened before Webster arrived. They had sent out a helicopter when the ship had first arrived, and it had returned with scorch mark on its side. The people aboard had claimed a blue fireball had hit them, and returned with the confirmation of people on board. The driver cut the engine completely once they reached the ship, using the remaining momentum to steer the boat alongside the ship. The ship was quiet as the group of New Yorkers stared up at it, but after a few seconds, voices started drifting down. "Idiot," a teenager's voice was heard. "I already told you it wasn't a weapon." "How could we know that?" An older, male voice questioned. "That thing could have been a bomb or something similar." "It was a vehicle." The teenager's voice retorted. "There were people inside. We just appeared in a flash of light. They're probably curious." Webster frowned. They were curious, but he would have never assumed that. He was always prepared for hostile encounters. "That thing could fly. So can you." That statement caught his attention as well. "Fly?" "Look," the teenager continued. "I know where we are. As long as we don't give them a reason to attack, we'll be fine." "What about the boat that just arrived?" a new voice asked. "Like I said," the teenager sounded annoyed. "Curiosity." Then Webster saw someone appear at the railing, looking down at them. "They're not armed," he said, talking to someone Webster couldn't see. Book sighed. "We wish to speak with you," he shouted up. The teenager looked down again. Another person joined the teenager at the railing, this one older and blonde. The newcomer was more intimidating, his glare plainly visible. "We want to determine if you are peaceable people." The teenager started laughing and the blonde turned away, shouting unintelligibly. Several long minutes passed before the blonde reappeared. "Who the hell are you?" "Calvin Webster," Webster shouted up, "police chief." The blonde turned to the teenager. Translation? The teenager shrugged. "I guess he'd be a Marine, but that's more like the Coast Guard. A land Marine? That's it." "Let them up," the blonde sighed. Haruta, put that away. Vista, get the ladder. Marco, another unseen person, addressed the blonde. Are you sure that's a good idea? I don't want to start a fight in unknown territory, Marco replied. A larger person came into view, this one sporting a fancy black mustache and carrying a large bundle of rope. He tossed one end over the side and secured his end to the railing of the ship. The other end hit the water with a slap. Haruta, I told you to put that away. Marco vanished from sight as Webster caught the ladder. Is this safe? Another officer asked. I don't know, Webster sighed as he began climbing. The black-haired teenager hadn't moved from his spot, leaning against the railing with a strange expression. Welcome aboard, he greeted as Webster's feet hit the deck. I'm going to have to warn you not to freak out if you see anything unusual. Book, and one of the scientists joined him on the deck as well, the others opting to stay on the small boat. The teenager repeated his warning to the newcomers. The three New York citizens stared at the people gathered on the ship, an unusual group. Marco, the one who seemed to be in charge, approached them again, and the teenager started backing away. Hold on, Milo, Marco addressed the teenager, who winced slightly. Marco turned to the three. My name is Marco. I'm the acting captain of this ship. Before I answer any questions, I want to know where we are, and how to get back. He looked intimidating, his arms crossed and eyes glaring. Beside him, Milo ran a hand through his hair and frowned. You're in New York City, Book started, in the United States. The names were completely lost on the man, so the teenager elaborated. New York is a city, and the United States is like a kingdom. We don't know how to get you back, Book told Marco. Marco grimaced and Milo turned to the scientist. How much do you know about the two worlds? The scientist frowned at the question, but answered. The first shifts were detected 20 years ago. How do you know about the two worlds? Milo turned to Marco, ignoring the lab coat. Did anything happen 20 years ago that could have caused this? Several of the older members broke out in whispers, quieting when Marco looked over. You know something, the scientist accused. There was an event, Marco began, his hands curling into fists. That might have caused this. A crack in the air was created. Marco, Izo whispered, are you going to? I want to get back, Marco gritted out. I'll only say as much as I need to. The scientist had produced a notebook from one of his pockets and begun scribbling. A crack in the air. Do you know what caused it? What happened? The cracks vanished after a while, Marco said. That's all I can tell you. The scientist looked disappointed. Milo swallowed. My parents are sighed, he told Marco. Your world. But, I was born here. They crossed over too, a long time ago. They told me they were attacked by someone and woke up here. Yo, you were born here? Webster exclaimed. Milo nodded. This means it's been going on for a while. I mean, my parents came over before I was born. And how old are you? Book asked. 16, Milo answered. But, coming over this time wasn't as rough as last time. Webster was thinking about what the boy had said. He was from this world. Hey, kid. It's Milo, sorry. Milo, Webster corrected. How long ago did you cross over? Just over 2 months ago, Milo answered. Marco's eyes widened slightly, and the scientist leapt forward. You were one of the people in the school when it disappeared. The scientist exclaimed, grasping Milo's face, turning it upwards. Yeah, Milo tugged at the offending hands, but the scientist didn't let up. What? Both Brooke and Webster turned to stare at Milo. Are they all right? What happened? Webster continued, eyes wide. He had been assigned to that case and always had the parents of the basketball team calling and annoying him. He wanted to know. We ended up on a beach, Milo said, shoving the scientist's hands away. Marines picked us up. Everyone's fine, as far as I know. Why are you not with them? Webster asked, suspicious. Because my parents are from that world, Milo repeated. Dad's ship was on the island the Marines brought us to, and he met an old friend of his, so he set sail. Webster sighed, at least they're not dead. How come you're not freaking out? Milo asked. I mean, a pirate ship just appeared out of thin air. I'm sure people are concerned about this, the scientist said. But when the school vanished, the government made the information on the ships public. He paused for a moment. Did you say pirate? The crew burst into laughter, making the three New Yorkers step back a bit. As long as you don't strike first, we will have no reason to attack. But if you do strike first, we will defend ourselves. Marco warned. He held up a curled fist. But then Milo shook his head. Marco caught the action and lowered his fist. The strange actions made Webster curious, but he didn't say anything. Book took a breath. All right. We need to get this ship to the docks. Are you able to sail there? Izo turned. You dare insult the skills of the Whitebeard pirates? Book didn't know how to respond. Luckily, Milo saved him the trouble. Don't answer that, Milo told him. They take pride in their skills. You don't insult them and get away with it. Aren't you scared, being on this ship? Book asked, watching Webster shout down to the boat, probably relaying instructions. He heard the roar of a motor, and assumed Webster sent them ahead to warn the people waiting at the docks. Not really, Milo answered, shrugging. They're good people, saved me. Saved you? Yeah. I was separated from my parents' ship and ended up on a deserted island. They picked me up, Milo explained. That's good. Book was now watching the pirates prepare to set sail. They were very efficient. But won't your parents be concerned? Nah, Milo waved his hand dismissively. They're pirates too. Although, I think Namur is the only one who knows that. Namur? Book questioned. A pirate. A fishman, actually. Remember when I said not to freak out about anything unusual? Book nodded. He looks like a fish. Has gills and everything. Apparently there are also mermaids. It's a really cool place, despite the dangers. Gills, Book repeated. Milo nodded. I think he's down in the hold right now. Or sleeping. Book just nodded, following the teenager as he walked to the bow. I owe Marco a full explanation, and I'm not looking forward to that conversation. About being from this world? Milo shook his head. My parents. They're famous over there. And Marco thinks they're dead. Apparently they were friends. Suddenly, Milo jerked upright. That reindeer? He exclaimed. Haruta said he was part of his crew. That means, Milo trailed off, knocking his head against the railing and staying there. Damn, I should have realized it earlier. I've heard that story several times over. Are you alright? Yeah, Peachy, are you sure? Milo sighed. I just want to find my parents, and staying with Marco and the Whitebeard pirates is my best chance. The ship started moving, and Book could see the motorboat they came over and arrive at the docks. Milo brightened at the prospect of actually being in New York again, and soon enough, the ship came to rest at one of the larger docks. Police were shoving people away from the docks, keeping them as far away from the pirate ship as possible. The only people allowed through were the reporters from Fox News. Marco ordered everyone to stay away from the edge after Milo explained what the strange devices some of them were carrying. Milo was ignoring Marco's order, standing next to Andrew Taylor, the scientist, at the ladder. The people down there are scanning for any of the shift energy, the scientist told Milo. We're trying to predict where the next one will occur, and hopefully get you back. Milo nodded. That's good. Marco will be happy to hear that. Are you going to leave with them? Milo hesitated, and then nodded. Yes. My parents are there. I can't abandon them. Well, I wish you luck. I'll be back tomorrow. Is there anything I can bring you? Milo pulled something from his pocket and held it out. A cell phone. He had a cell phone. Can you fix this? How the hell did that thing survive? Milo raised an eyebrow. I took care of it, he said simply. Mom said a friend of hers might be able to fix it, but since I was separated. Taylor took the phone and pocketed it. I'll try. Thanks, Milo grinned. Taylor climbed down, and Milo saw one of the cameras pointed in his direction. He waved, grinning, before walking back to the galley, dreading the upcoming conversation with Marco. The Thousand Sunny had been on the water for a while now, and everyone was getting stir-crazy. Belmere and Tom had formed an unlikely bond and passed time playing pranks on Kuina, Blake, and the original members of the Straw Hat crew. It was cute at first, but after a while, even Nami was getting tired of it. Belmere, Nami scolded. If you do that again, I'm going to ground you. You can't ground me, I'm a pirate, Belmere sung, dancing around with a bottle of whipped cream in her hand. I'm still your mother, young lady, Nami said, snagging the whipped cream from Belmere's hand. Zoro glared at it, wiping his face clean of the stuff. Apologized to Zoro. Belmere stuck out her tongue. Nah, Luffy, deal with your daughter, Nami said, giving up and marching away. Luffy stood, taking the bottle from Nami and grabbing Belmere, hoisting her up on his shoulder. Belmere shrieked, laughing, but then abruptly cut off as Luffy stuck his finger in the bottle and drew a line across her forehead with whipped cream. He drew another line, this one starting between her eyes and ending at her nose. Daddy, Belmere started tearing up, I don't like this. Well then, if you don't like it, do you think Zoro liked it? Luffy asked. No, Belmere started pouting. Then what do you say? Luffy stuck his finger in his mouth, removing the whipped cream from his fingers. I'm sorry, Zoro, Belmere said softly. Zoro stood and patted Belmere's head. It's okay, squirt. Belmere grinned, and Nami slapped her forehead. Is that the way to discipline your child, Luffy? Nami asked, looking murderous. You said to deal with her, Luffy defended. Now she needs a bath. Honestly. She picked Belmere up and vanished into the ship. Luffy looked down at the whipped cream in his hand and shrugged, starting to eat it. Zoro grimaced while Kuina laughed at him. Robin was off to the side, lecturing Tom for the prank and trying to hide a smile. I guess having kids aboard is going to be an adventure in itself, Frankie said. Blake coming to S. Denley. Blake ran to the railing. It's a ship. Everyone turned to stare out at the sea to see a marine ship, unnervingly close. No one's on lookout duty, Robin said. A cannon shot was heard, the ball splashing into the water. Nami ran out of the kitchen door, Belmere in one hand and a cloth in the other. Belmere's face was clean, and she looked scared. Another cannon was shot, and Zoro was on his feet, a sword readied. The cannonball landed in the water again, although this one was closer. Get inside, Nami ordered, dropping the cloth and readying her cleam attack. Belmere didn't protest. Blake and Tom following her inside. Kuina drew her sword, standing protectively in front of the door. Robin, Frankie, Zoro, and Luffy took their stances, preparing for the battle. The ship got closer, and Luffy gasped. Gramps? Zoro jumped up, using the railing to launch himself up. He sliced another cannonball in half, the two pieces falling harmlessly in the water instead of hitting the mast. It's Garp, Zoro said, landing. Garp? Nami exclaimed. You're kidding, Frankie shook his head, he's been going after Marco since he became an emperor. Luffy laughed, deflecting the next shot, sending it back towards the marine ship. He got a clear view of his grandfather, who hadn't changed since the last time Luffy saw him. Hi Gramps, Luffy shouted. The marine ship drew alongside the Thousand Sunny, Marines throwing grappling hooks to secure the ships together. Luffy had relaxed, not looking to fight anymore. Zoro also relaxed, despite the Marines flocking onto their ship. Garp followed the Marines, his arms crossed and a scowl fixed on his face. He stopped in front of Luffy, who stood up straighter. Suddenly, Garp punched Luffy in the face, sending the younger male into the mast. Luffy! Nami exclaimed, pointing the end of her cleam attack at Garp, the end of it sparking. Luffy emerged from the dust cloud, coughing. No fair, he complained. No fair? Garp boomed, grabbing Luffy's collar and lifting him up. Where the hell were you? You didn't call, you didn't write. I thought you really were dead. I would have if I could, Luffy shouted back, kicking his feet. I'm serious. Nami jumped up, slamming her weapon into Garp's back. Let him go. Garp looked down at the orange-haired woman, but released his grandson, who fell to the grassy deck with an oof. Are you alright? Nami asked, pointing her weapon. Luffy stood up. I'm fine. Garp glared at Luffy. I thought you were dead. Luffy winced. I know. Why didn't you tell me you were okay? Garp demanded. I couldn't, Luffy said. We weren't here. Garp sighed, stepping forward and grabbing Luffy again. Hey! But Garp didn't hit him, instead embracing him, trapping Luffy's arms at his side. Luffy struggled for a few seconds, but when he heard Zoro sheath his swords he stopped. Garp was crying. Luffy felt the silent sobs shake the old man's body. I'm sorry, Luffy said quietly, and Garp only tightened his grip. Nami smiled, nodding at Kuina who had sheathed her sword when her father did. She opened the door, leaning in. A second later, the second-generation Straw Hats emerged. Belmere ran towards Nami. Is Daddy okay? Garp paused, looking down at the little girl. He released Luffy, who stumbled as he hit the grass. Is that your daughter? Luffy smiled, holding out a hand. Come here, Belmere. This is my grandfather. Grandpa? Belmere repeated. Garp knelt down. Hello there. Belmere blushed, hiding behind Luffy. It's all right, he's good. Are you? Luffy gently pushed Belmere forward, sending her closer to the large, old man. Are you Daddy's grandpa? I am. Aren't you adorable? Garp held out a hand, and Belmere placed her hand in his before smiling and hugging him. Can I call you Grandpa? She asked. Garp laughed, of course. He stood, Belmere in his arms. He looked around at the Marines gathered on the Thousand Sunny. What are you standing around here for? Get back to the ship. The Marines started scrambling away, as Garp turned to Luffy. Where were you, Luffy? Luffy sighed, far away. In another world, actually. In a place called New York. The name caught Garp's attention, remembering the boy on Marco's ship. He said he was from New York, didn't he? No, he said he was born in New York. So the rumors are true, he muttered to himself quietly. Then louder, he said. I've seen Marco recently, Garp said. And there was a boy with him, who looked like you. Is. You saw Milo? Nami asked. Yes, that was his name, is he? He's our son, Luffy said, glancing at Nami. Garp laughed. Well then, I guess that wanted poster should do it. Wanted poster? Luffy asked. Of course. That boy attacked an officer. Garp jumped slightly when Nami shrieked. Milo's got a wanted poster, she shouted. Luffy started laughing. That's great, Monkey D. Milo, how much is it? 20 million, Garp said. Kid's got potential, he looks like a good boy. He is a good boy, Nami said. He's a bit reluctant, but he can do a lot if he wants to. He's a lot like Luffy, actually. Garp laughed, handing Belmere back to Nami. Well then, I understand how hard it was to raise a child like Luffy. Nami smiled, placing Belmere on the deck. It's good to see you again, Garp. We missed you. Garp's smile softened, examining the 4 children on the ship. Is this the future of the Straw Hats? Hopefully, Zoro said, his first input in the conversation. Garp. Someone on his ship shouted. There's someone on line 4, it's urgent. Garp sighed. I have to get going. But you have to keep in contact this time. If you don't, Garp paused, thinking of a threat. I'll get back to you on that. Belmere giggled. I like you. That makes me happy, Garp said, leaning down in front of her. Belmere leaned forward and kissed his cheek. I'll see you again, okay? Remind your daddy if he forgets. Belmere saluted. Roger, Garp. The Marine shouted again. Garp turned, jumping back to his own ship. The Marines disconnected the ship, a wave pushing them apart. Garp slammed the receiver down, groaning in annoyance. Nothing important again. He was telling you to keep a lookout for the Pirate King, a Marine said. But I guess that doesn't matter to you. Huh? Garp snorted. Well, considering we just sighted them, so do you think we should report that? It's your choice, sir, the Marine saluted. Garp nodded, changing the topic. Have you finished the wanted poster yet? The new Whitebeard pirate. The copies still have to be printed. Change the name on the poster. Call him Milo the Prince. The Marine saluted again. Yes, sir. You fixed it, Milo shouted, jumping up and grabbing his phone from Taylor as he climbed up the ship. I could kiss you. I'll just take your thanks, Taylor replied. Milo wasn't planning on kissing him either. He had sat down and turned on the device. It was just water damage. What are you doing? Checking the news, Milo replied. It's been more than 2 months, and I'm curious. I mean, a ship appeared out of nowhere, right? What are the news people saying? They're reporting what they can, Taylor said, glancing up when he heard footsteps. Marco was walking towards them. They really want to talk to you guys. I want to get out of here, Marco said, not talk to people. Milo tapped his phone, bringing up the Fox News website and selecting a video file. It began loading and Marco crouched down beside Milo, watching over his shoulder. You should at least let Milo speak with them, Taylor said to Marco. Assure the families of the missing people of something. No, Marco said sternly, I don't like the situation we're in, and if I had a choice, we'd be out at sea. But I convinced him to stay, because you guys are going to detect another portal, right? Milo looked up. Detecting a shift, Taylor corrected, and we're trying. Shish, Milo said suddenly, the video starting to play. In an unexpected turn of events, another phenomenon occurred. Opposite of the high school incident though, an object appeared. A large ship appeared in the bay, containing civilians, Marco snorted, and was brought to the harbor. We have yet to speak with anyone on board, and do not yet know. The video cut off, and Milo sighed. Damn, terrible connection. Well, whatever that was, we know they don't know much, Marco said. And you have to realize, Taylor told Marco, that the unknown makes people scared. You might want to be careful with what you do. We can defend ourselves, Marco said seriously, clenching his fist. Taylor could have sworn he saw a flash of blue. He walked away. I'm still curious, Milo, as to how you got aboard this kind of ship. I took a look at the missing people list, and your name is on it. Your parents and sister are over there too? Milo nodded. Belmir took to it right away, and Mom and Dad are from that world. Dad said he and Mom were born in a place called East Blue. Belmir? I'm guessing that's your sister, Taylor said, and your parents, Lou. Milo shook his head. Don't say their names. Taylor raised an eyebrow, but didn't question it. All right, now, I've got to go. If you need anything. Milo nodded, see ya, and turned back to his phone. Later that evening, Marco approached Milo while everyone was eating. Come to my room after, I want your explanation. Milo swallowed the food in his mouth. A difficult task with the sudden dryness in his throat. Okay. Jozu looked sympathetic. I feel for ya, kid. Marco's angry. I'm worried about what he'll say when he finds out who I am. Milo muttered, dropping his fork into his food, suddenly not hungry. Are you planning to stay in this world? Jozu asked, eyeing Milo's plate. No, I want to go back, Milo responded, pushing his plate across the table. Well then there will be no problems. Marco likes you. He isn't going to do anything bad. Jozu happily accepted Milo's plate. Milo pushed himself up. Well, let's get this over with. Good luck. Jozu called through a mouthful of food. Milo knocked on Marco's door, his stomach twisting. Marco opened the door a minute later, allowing Milo to walk in. Sit down, Marco said, gesturing around. Milo sat on the edge of the bed and Marco dragged the chair over, sitting on it backwards. Who are you, Milo? Marco asked. I'm me, Milo said, smiling softly. I was born in New York City. Not far from here, in fact. I lived with my parents and sister. One day, just over 2 months ago, someone was making fun of a friend so I hit him. I got caught, and the principal of the school called my parents for a meeting. We went, and the school vanished, appearing on a beach. Marco blinked at the explanation. You said your parents were born in our world. Who are they? Milo had been waiting for that question. He brought out his phone, searching for his pictures. My sister's name is Belmir. Milo found the picture he wanted. And they're my parents. He turned the phone around, allowing Marco to view the picture. Marco stared at the picture for a few long seconds. Then he took the phone from Milo, looking at it closer. Wah. Milo flicked his finger across the screen, moving to the next picture. My full name is Milo Monkey, although the names are reversed in your world, so it would be Monkey Milo. Marco shook his head. It would be Monkey D. Milo, since your father is Monkey D. Luffy. Marco copied Milo's movement, dragging his finger across the screen and changing the picture. You mean, they were here the entire time? I thought. Everyone thought they were dead. When we arrived in your world, Dad met someone named Zoro, and it turned out he was his best friend. Marco nodded. Pirate Hunter Zoro, the Pirate King's first mate. You're the Pirate King's son. Milo snorted, and I didn't know. Luffy's alive. He was the last time I checked, and I hope he still is, Milo said. Marco continued browsing through Milo's photos, many of them of containing Luffy and Nami. He was silent for a while, Milo staying seated and waiting for Marco to speak again. Finally, Marco stopped and handed the phone back. Milo glanced at the photo, a picture of Malcolm holding Andy in a headlock, and then turned his phone off. I never would have thought, Marco said. You look like him, but I thought he was dead. Marco laughed. And they're back in our world? Milo nodded. You can ask the scientist. I think his name is Taylor. He has the list of people who disappeared with the school. Marco laughed again. Well, I think this calls for a party. Your parties will scare the people on the docks, Milo muttered, but allowed himself to be dragged out of the room and back into the galley. Marco burst through the doors, startling most of the people in there. Bust out the sake. A collective cheer came from the crowd, and they wasted no time in pulling out the barrels they had bought from the Drum Kingdom. "What's it for?" Namur asked. Milo agreed to join. "Still working on that," Marco said, "but we have something to look forward to when we get back." "And what's that?" Namur glanced at Milo curiously, the boy looking away. "We're going to meet up with Luffy." Complete silence fell over the group. Marco's words seemed to echo throughout the room. Milo turned red. What was that? Marco slapped Milo's back, causing the teenager to stumble forward slightly. "This boy hasn't introduced himself properly. His name is Monkey D. Milo." Mary and Brandon ran along the beach with several other children, Betty sitting on a rock a ways up the beach. Brandon pointed a stick at another boy. "I, the mighty pirate, will take you down and steal your treasure." "Nua!" the other boy shouted, brandishing his own stick. "I'm gonna beat you up." The two boys started fighting, their sticks colliding. The rest of the kids cheered them on, until Betty came over and stopped their fight. "Brandon, you know better than to act like a pirate. They're bad people." "No way." Brandon shouted back, "Daddy and Sanji are pirates." "Sanji isn't a pirate," Betty said sternly. "He was pretending to be one to scare Anion." Brandon stuck out his tongue. "Daddy was a pirate, and he beat up people and went on adventures." Brandon ran down the beach, waving his stick and shouting incoherently. Betty sighed, grabbing hold of Mary's hand as she started to follow her brother. By now, Brandon had reached the end of the beach and had stopped, staring wide-eyed at something Betty couldn't see yet. "Brandon," Betty called, "come back. It's almost time to go home." "It's a ship," Brandon called back. "I see a ship." "Come back here now," Betty shouted. As the ship came around the side of, she shouted again, this time desperate. The ship was flying a skull and crossbones, right now. Brandon listened this time, turning back and running towards the group. As he began running, several people emerged from the trees. They looked rough, all four of them carrying weapons. And they emerged in front of Brandon, making the 8-year-old freeze. It was then Betty noticed the small boat resting on the sand a ways up the beach, really close to where Brandon was standing. "Looky here," one of them said, leaning down in front of Brandon. "So there is people here." Brandon trembled where he stood, leaning back when the pirate leaned forward. Suddenly, he was moving, attempting to escape by running through a pirate's legs. The pirate caught the boy though, lifting him up by the collar of his shirt. "Let me go," Brandon shouted, his arms and legs flailing. "Ya think he's worth something? I dunno. My daddy will beat you up, he's a strong pirate." The men laughed, and then spotted Betty and the cowering children. "Who's dad?" "More of them peoples," another answered. "Oh, you. This kid here challenged his papa against us. I could do it, a fight. Get, I am." Betty could only nod as the pirates started stalking towards the boat. As they walked, Mary pressed herself against Betty. They didn't do anything though. Completely silent except for Brandon struggling. As soon as they were far enough away, Betty headed towards the docks, where Usopp would be. It would also be the place the pirates would dock, as the cliffs wouldn't allow them access to the island. "Usopp," Betty shouted, and he appeared a moment later, wiping grease off of his face. "Betty. What's wrong?" "Pirates," Betty panted. "They took Brandon. Brandon said you could fight them, and now they want to fight you." Usopp's face darkened. "What? Them?" Betty pointed out at the water, where a ship was approaching. It was them. Usopp looked over to the large ship, and when he focused his goggles and peered through them, he could see Brandon on the pirate ship. He also saw what looked like the captain. Green hair, 3 swords. He knew it couldn't really be Zoro. "Brandon looks okay," Usopp said. "Get the kids out of here. Mary, go find Sanji. He should be at the restaurant. Tell him to come here, alright?" Mary nodded, wiping tears away and sprinting up the road. "What are you going to do?" Betty asked. "That man has my son," Usopp replied. "I'm going to fight him." Betty watched as Usopp stalked towards his bag and started fishing around in it. After a minute, he had produced several green sticks, which he started fitting together. The end result was a large slingshot, 5 straps holding a small bag in place. "This is the kabuto," Usopp said when Betty stared at it. He pulled out something else. glinting gold before Usopp hid it in a pocket. Usopp turned, watching the ship as it came closer. The news that the pirates had Brandon spread through the docks quickly. Anion approached, looking unusually serious. "If you need help fighting." "It's okay, Anion," Usopp said, brandishing his slingshot. "They're not going to know what they're up against." Anion looked like he was going to laugh, but stopped himself. The ship had docked, the workers staying away from it. The person imitating Zoro descended, Brandon slung over his shoulder. Usopp stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "Who do you think you are, Zoro, taking my kid?" The fake Zoro laughed, dropping Brandon, who scrambled towards his father and hiding behind him. "Go to Granny," Usopp said. Brandon complied. "So you know who I am," fake Zoro laughed. "That's good. Now, I'll give you a choice. You can fight me, and die. Or you can apologize and fix my ship." "We'll fix it," Dre said, nodding frantically. Usopp held out his arm. "Come on, Zoro," Usopp said, sounding annoyed. "I know it's been a while since I've seen you, but you've really changed." Usopp grinned inwardly, glad he hadn't lost his ability to act. Fake Zoro stopped, surprised at the comment. "I don't know you." "Ha ha, very funny. It's been over 16 years. I see you started your own crew. Why didn't you contact the rest of us?" It's me, Zoro. You can't have forgotten. Geez, you really have changed. Where's Kuina?" "Who?" By now, both the dock workers and the fake Zoro's crew were staring at the two people. Anion was biting his lip. Dre looked terrified. "You can't have forgotten your own daughter, Zoro. I was there when you told us." "I don't have a kid," fake Zoro snapped, and Usopp swallowed at the tone. "Who the hell are you?" Usopp sighed. "Well, I had hoped to bluff my way through this, but I guess I can't." Now, Usopp glared back at fake Zoro. "I should be asking you that question. Who the hell are you?" Fake Zoro drew one of his swords. "I am the first mate of the Pirate King's crew. If you don't wish to die, I suggest you back off." "Back off my ass," Usopp snapped. "We've had enough people imitate us, and it's beginning to piss me off. If you want to start a pirate crew, that's fine. But when you pretend to be one of my friends, that isn't so fine." "Usopp," Jerry said quietly, "do as he says, back off." "No, I'm not a coward anymore. You," he pointed at fake Zoro, "are pretending to be my friend. I'm not going to stand for it." "I am the pirate hunter Zoro," fake Zoro declared. "You're a fake," Usopp said in the same tone. He held up his weapon, the strings pulled taut and ready to release an attack. "I know Zoro. I sailed aboard the Thousand Sunny with Zoro. I stood beside Zoro as we watched Luffy and Nami vanish. I helped Zoro when he showed up on my doorstep with a newborn baby. You don't know who Kuina is. You're not my friend. You're an imposter. I was a part of Luffy's crew. You weren't." Fake Zoro laughed. "I would have remembered someone like you if you were aboard the ship." "Really?" Usopp said, "because I don't have a bounty on my head. My guess is you're using the wanted posters to avoid the real members of the Straw Hats." He released the tension on the strings, letting the bag swing loosely. "Luffy's sharpshooter's bounty is on Sogekane." Usopp pulled out the mask he had hidden in his pocket, holding it in one hand tauntingly. "And I just so happen to be Sogekane." He placed the mask on his face, readying his weapon again before firing. Gasps went up from both sides, and Sanji, who had just arrived, grinned. "So, you finally reveal yourself." Usopp looked over, ignoring the angry shouts of the pirates who had been picked up by vines and thrown around. "Well, Zoro isn't this guy, and he pissed me off." "I know, Mary told me." Sanji stepped forward, the fake Zoro cutting himself loose and dropping to the ground. "This guy ain't the Mosshead." "What did you just call me?" Fake Zoro demanded. "Who do you think you are?" "I'm a member of the monster trio," Sanji said, raising his foot. "Black leg Sanji." "No you're not," fake Zoro shouted, drawing another sword and pointing one at each person. Sanji glanced at Usopp. "Do you want to?" "Gladly," Usopp grinned, firing off 3 shots. One hit fake Zoro's head. Another hit his stomach. A third hit his groin. Fake Zoro groaned in pain, falling to his knees and clutching at the places of impact. "Captain!" Someone from the ship shouted. "I wonder if your crew knows you're a fake," Sanji mused, walking over and crouching beside the downed imposter. "I'm not," the fake Zoro wheezed. A fake. Sanji shook his head. You might want to come get your captain. He called to the pirates on the boat. And I suggest you leave. You managed to anger Sogeking, and that puts you in a very bad position. No one moved, so Sanji hefted the fake Zoro and tossed him over the railing of the ship. Usopp took off his mask, glowering at the crew. Many of them took the advice and began to start sailing. The captain tried to protest, but he was ignored. Sanji grinned. The crew obviously hadn't known their captain was a fake. Mary ran up to her father, hugging him around the waist. You beat that bad guy. Don crashed into him from behind. Usopp knelt down, a child in each arm. Are you alright, Brandon? The dark-haired boy nodded against Usopp's shoulder. That's good, you were brave. Dre approached, standing next to Sanji. You really weren't kidding. Sanji laughed. Who in their right mind would lie about that? You just saw what happened to imposters. Dre shuddered. I'm curious. Why don't you have a bounty? Usopp stood, lifting Brandon and Mary in his arms. Long story. Mary giggled. Daddy and Luffy fought and Daddy left, but then he wanted to help, and used a mask. That's basically it, Usopp said. Sanji nodded in agreement. You and the Pirate King fought? Jerry exclaimed. He wasn't Pirate King yet, Usopp defended, and it was a big deal. Anaon shook his head, watching the fake Zoro's ship sail away. I thought we had this dealt with already, Sanji said. We're pirates. Done. That's it, haven't you accepted it yet? Usopp looked down at his kids. Well, I really don't care what they think. I'm taking them home. Gert, who had been standing at the front of the crowd, nodded in understanding. Yes, you should let Brandon rest. Usopp left the docks, leaving Sanji to talk to Anaon. Are you going to answer my question? No, Sanji shook his head, leaving the docks and heading back up to the restaurant. Since he was staying at Kaya's house, Kaya had ordered him to get a job. It was good enough, but the place was small. He was tempted to head back to the Baratie and wait for more news on the Thousand Sunny and Luffy's supposed return. He still didn't completely believe it, and that imposter just solidified his suspicions. Sanji dropped his cigarette in the dirt, grinding his heel into the embers to extinguish them. The party lasted most of the night, and everyone slept in late the next morning. Even Marco, who was typically an early riser, was in bed until noon. Milo had left the celebration early, and the result was he was the only one awake that morning. He turned on his phone, texting Malcolm to say he was alright. He didn't expect a reply. What happened? Webster asked, looking up as Milo leaned over the railing. There was a lot of noise last night. They had a party, Milo said. That was a party? Milo laughed, nodding. I'm coming down, is that alright? Webster nodded, and Milo climbed down the ladder. He wobbled slightly as his feet hit the solid dock. It's been a while since I've been on shore, Milo explained, as Webster steadied him. Your friends are quite rambunctious. Webster commented. You've been with them for 2 months, correct? Something like that, Milo said. Marco's a friend of Dad's, and they were happy when they figured out he was alive. I saw the list. Your father's name is Luffy, right? And Nami's your mother. Webster glanced at the younger curiously. You said several times your. My parents were born there. Not here. Yeah. Dad's the Pirate King. In the other world. I really can't explain anything else. I don't know much. Milo waved his hand, sounding annoyed. Webster sighed. Sorry. It's just, we never expected to have one of the high school victims come back. I didn't expect to come back either. I want to go back with them, though. Webster nodded, but didn't say anything. The kid was strange, but Webster wasn't going to point that out. This kid had many extremely strong people to back him up. What happened next was sudden, and it startled Webster. A rock came flying from the direction of shore, aimed for the back of Milo's head. The teenager seemed to know it was there, yanking a small pole from his coat and swinging it. He hit the rock, sending it back towards the thrower. A couple young men, probably college students, cursed and started scrambling away. Get them! Webster shouted to several officers lingering around, pointing at the fleeing people. The officers darted after them. He turned to Milo, to ask him what the hell he just did. But Milo looked as confused as Webster felt. He stared at the silver pole in his hands as if it were a bomb. Are you alright? Did you see that? Milo exclaimed, staring at the pole. I hit that rock, like a baseball. It was really easy, It shouldn't have been that easy. Sit down, Webster ordered. Take a deep breath. Milo complied, taking a seat. He kept staring at the pole. Webster examined it as well. It was small, the length of Milo's forearm, and looked like it was made of pure silver. There was a small impression in the middle, but Webster couldn't imagine its purpose. "Hey, Webster." Webster looked up. 2 officers standing, holding 2 young men in handcuffs. "We got him." Webster stood up. "Good. You too. Do you know the situation right now?" Both boys looked away. Webster continued. "We have very strong people from another world on that ship." So, one of them grumbled, "It's not like we attacked them." Webster pointed at Milo. "You threw a rock at him. I don't know if you realize this, but that boy's part of that crew." "Traveling with that crew," Milo corrected, standing. He still held his pole in his hand. "I'm not an actual member yet." "You don't look like a pirate," the second one said. "Thought you were the kid of one of them." He jerked his head as the lingering people. "I'm still getting used to the lifestyle," Milo said. "It's okay, Webster. I really don't mind. Just don't mention this to Marco, and everything will be fine." "Mention what to Marco?" Namur's voice called down. Everyone glanced up, the 2 college students staring bug-eyed and open-mouthed at the fishman. "The fact you were attacked?" "Please don't tell him," Milo said, grimacing. "He's scary when he lights himself on fire." Namur laughed. "I saw the whole thing. You, my boy, might have hockey. Your father is quite skilled with it, so I would imagine you have a strong sense of it as well." "Ha what?" Namur shook his head. "I'll explain later." He turned his gaze towards the 2 boys. "You have a lot of nerve attacking Milo." "Namur, you guys just found out. I doubt the people of this other world will know." "I suppose you're right," Namur sighed. Webster sighed. "I'm sorry about this, Milo, really." Milo turned back to Webster. "I said it's fine, Webster. I'm serious, I don't care." Webster nodded at the officers, who unlocked the handcuffs. Both boys looked unsure of what to do, and kept glancing up at Namur. "What the hell is that?" one of them whispered. "That's Namur," Milo, who had heard, answered. "He's a fishman." "Your world is weird," the second one said. Milo shrugged. "You get used to it." "Come on." Webster placed a firm hand on each of their shoulders. "You aren't allowed to be here. I'm going to escort you off the docks." Milo waved as Webster led them away and then boarded the ship again, joining Namur. He watched the 2 young men leave the docks, running off as soon as Webster released them. They were alone for another hour, and then Marco stumbled out of his room, squinting against the sunlight. "Are you hungover?" Milo laughed. "Shut up," Marco shot back, rubbing his bloodshot eyes. Namur hid a smile as well, and over the course of the afternoon the rest of the crew had stumbled out. The thought didn't occur to Milo until the next day. He quickly spoke with Marco to get his approval and then climbing down to find Webster. Webster was the police chief, so he might be able to pull some strings. "Hey, police dude." Webster looked up at Milo, dismissing the officers he had been talking to. "You're lucky I'm required to be here, Milo. I don't think many others would respond to that name." "Sorry, I have a question." "Oh, would it be possible to bring me to my house?" Milo asked. "I mean, there's stuff I could use, and Mom would never forgive me if I don't bring back something if I was here, please?" "That's an unusual request," Webster said, "but I suppose I could." "Yes. Thanks," Milo cheered, waving up at the ship. Webster saw Marco, who was standing at the railing, give a nod. Webster had to sneak Milo around the usual crowd of reporters and bystanders. It wasn't a very difficult task once Webster sent one of the scientists to speak with them about their latest findings. Everyone crowded around the poor scientist, and the 2 of them were able to slip past without any troubles. The police chief used his own car, not wanting to draw any more unwanted attention. He had to remind Milo to put on his seatbelt before starting the car, following the directions Milo was giving him. He maneuvered through the downtown traffic, and then onto the less busy streets of a residential area. "Turn left here," Milo directed, pointing. "It's number 4. Webster pulled into the driveway and examined the house. It looked ordinary, with gray brickwork, a white door, and a garden. Milo fumbled with his seatbelt, jumping out of the car and headed towards the garden. Webster stepped out as well, watching Milo as he lifted a rock and produced a key. "What do you plan to get?" he asked. "I don't know." Milo unlocked the front door. Sentimental stuff, I guess. It's nice to be home. Webster followed the boy into the house and flicked a light switch. Nothing happened. The electrical company probably cut your power when you stopped paying. Damn, don't open the fridge then. Webster nodded, opening a curtain to let in more light. Milo had vanished up the stairs, so Webster took a seat on one of the kitchen chairs and waited for the boy to return. Milo reappeared a while later with an armful of stuff and dumped it on the table before dashing off again, this time into an adjacent room. Curiously, Webster eyed the pile the boy had left. He picked up a book. A photo album. That's Mom and Dad's wedding, Milo said, reappearing in the doorway. And a lot of my and Belmir's baby pictures. Mom went realized she didn't have them. You have good parents, if they care about that, Webster commented. Milo smiled. If you get past the fact they were keeping a lot of secrets, they're great. But I'm slowly figuring out those secrets. You're one brave kid, traveling with pirates. Webster shook his head. They're not like the pirates in the movies, Milo said. And I swear, I've seen every one of them. He gestured toward the living room. Dad has a collection. I'd bring them, but there aren't any TVs. He grabbed a backpack that was sitting on the floor. He turned the bag upside down, emptying the contents onto the kitchen counter and brought the now empty bag over to the table and started loading the contents of the pile into it. Lots of books, Webster noted, as Milo fit everything in. Once the bag was full, Milo slung it over his shoulder, wincing at the weight. I'm good. Are you sure you don't want to stay a bit longer? Webster asked. Milo started to shrug, but was interrupted when Webster's radio buzzed. Webster here, over, he spoke into the radio. We've got a situation over here at the docks, over, a nervous voice came through the radio. Milo froze. Webster frowned. Report, over. The light came back. The scientists say they're detecting a massive change in the unknown energy. The officer on the other end said, over. Anything else? Over. Webster asked, hoping for more information. Milo was staring at him. Something's coming through. The shout was full of static, but both listeners understood. I'll be back in 5 minutes, Webster said, abandoning formalities. He gestured for Milo to get moving. The boy was out of the house as Webster stood. He didn't bother locking the door as he climbed into the car, Webster only seconds behind him. It took them 10 minutes to reach the harbor, Milo fidgeting in the passenger seat. Webster blinked at the huge ship sitting in the middle of the bay. The word Marine was printed across the sails. Milo started pushing through the crowd, ignoring the protests and the guards at the beginning of the docks. He jumped past, sprinting towards the ship. A couple guards pursued him until he reached the ship, shouting up to Jozu and tossing his bag up. He scrambled up the ladder and was met with confusion. Marco was standing in the crow's nest, glaring at the ship sitting calmly in the water. Damn it, he heard Marco's shout, and took his bag back from Jozu, heading down to his room and dropping his bag in his hammock. He noticed Izo staring out one of the portholes. They're not going to let us fight, Milo said, crossing his arms and leaning against the wall. It would cause too much panic. That's not going to stop the Marines from attacking us, though, Izo said, and like Marco said, we will defend ourselves. Milo took a breath. Should I warn them to clear the docks? That might be best, Izo nodded, narrowing his eyes as a shout echoed from above. Milo left, emerging back on deck and confirming it was Marco who was yelling. Taylor and Webster were standing before him, both of their faces red. I don't give a damn. I want to know how the hell we get back. I'm really not in the mood to fight Marines right now. Marco was glaring daggers at the two men in front of him. I can't allow casualties, Webster said. It's my job to keep the city safe. Then get us a way back, Marco almost growled. I don't care how, we'll fight them over there. This doorway is only one way, Taylor shouted. It can only be accessed by that point, damn it. Listen to me. Marco grabbed Taylor's collar, dragging the man forward until they were face to face. Find us a damned doorway. Because there will be a fight. Blue flames licked across Marco's knuckles, and Taylor whimpered. Marco thrust him back as Marco turned away and burst into flames. A bird emerging from the sudden inferno. The bird flew up and perched on the top of the mast. You guys are lucky, Milo said, coming over. I'm going crazy. Taylor sat down hard, staring up, slack-jawed. Nope. That's just Marco when he's pissed. Didn't I mention he could turn into a phoenix? No, I don't believe you did, Taylor managed. Well, I did give you a warning, remember? Don't freak out when you see something unusual. Milo recalled. Namur wasn't the only person I was talking about. Marco can turn into a phoenix and can light himself on fire. Josu's arm is made of diamonds. Haruta doesn't have a devil fruit power, but she could be added to the list of strange things aboard this ship. Webster made a strangled sound in the back of his throat. So don't piss them off. They won't stand for anyone threatening a member of their crew. Milo continued. I was also asked to warn you. Clear the docks if you don't want anyone getting hurt. Do you count as a member of their crew? Taylor asked. Yes. I was also asked to warn you. Clear the docks if you don't want anyone getting hurt. Milo narrowed his eyes at them, daring them to protest. They didn't. Chopper dropped the binoculars when he saw the flag. They hit the snow without a sound, and Chopper made no move to pick them up. Dalton noticed the reindeer's distress. Chopper? Are you alright? That's the Sunny, Chopper said, pointing at the ship. The ship was too far out for the details to be seen clearly, so Dalton picked up the binoculars Chopper had dropped and peered through them. Well, the paper did say Straw Hat was back. But Luffy's dead, Chopper exclaimed. Maybe it's one of your crew members, Dalton commented. You went to visit the blue-haired man and his wife a couple times, right? Frankie and Robin, Chopper said. Maybe, they're probably coming to ask you if you want to join them. Dalton told the reindeer. See, they're turning this way. Chopper nodded. I'll greet them at the cove, then. Dalton nodded, handing back the binoculars. Chopper hopped off the rock he was standing on and made his way over to the cove. The same one Marco and the Whitebeard pirates had landed less than a week ago. Chopper waited as the ship got closer, eventually sailing into the cove. Chopper saw Frankie's blue hair and smiled, waving. Hey, Frankie. Frankie ran to the railing. Super Reindeer Dr. Bro. He shouted back, jumping off and landing hard in the snow. He grabbed Chopper, squeezing him until Chopper shouted for him to let go. Frankie placed him on his feet. You're not going to believe who's back. Did Zoro decide to start up? Chopper asked excitedly. 'Cause if you did, I'm going with you. Well, Zoro was there when me and Robin joined up again, Frankie said. Speaking of you two, Chopper said, suddenly serious. How are your kids? I haven't seen your youngest since he was born, and Tom was only one when I saw him last. They're super, Frankie said, but that's not what I meant. It's Luffy and Nami, they're alive. Chopper didn't respond, his mouth gaping. What? As if on cue, Luffy jumped down and scooped up the startled zone user in another crushing embrace. It's been a while, hasn't it? Chopper didn't struggle. Instead, he stared over his dead captain's shoulder at the two women who were climbing down from the ship. A dark-haired woman, Robin, hit the ground first, stepping out of the way so an orange-haired woman could stand as well. His eyes locked on the navigator, also supposed to be dead, and he let out a strangled whimper. You guys, Chopper sniffed, pulling an arm free and wiping his eyes. You have a lot of explaining to do. He felt Luffy laugh, and then he was back on his feet, staring up at the captain. I know, we'll explain everything. Chopper wiped away the tears and mucus that was running down his face, sniffing again. Come to the village with me, we can talk there. Nami smiled, nodding enthusiastically. Frankie turned his head upwards, towards the ship. Hey guys. Get your super asses down here. Nami whacked Frankie on the head. Watch your language. Chopper tried to keep a stern face, but failed at the sight. It was so painfully familiar that he had to laugh. The laughing as well, Luffy and Frankie exchanging puzzled glances. Kuina was the first to appear, leaning over the railing. Tom was the next to appear. Hi Chopper. Kuina waved. Hello, Kuina, Chopper returned. Kuina jumped, Tom following, as two more heads poked over the side of the ship. Blake opted to use the ladder, joining his parents on the ground. Dad won't wake up, Kuina told the adults. I wrote him a note. Don't even think about it. Belmir, Nami called up, as Belmir started climbing onto the rail. Use the ladder. The 12-year-old pouted, but brightened when Luffy stretched his arms and grabbed her around the waist and pulled her towards him. She laughed, huffing when she hit Luffy's chest. Wait, till you're a bit older, K. But they did it. Belmir pointed accusingly at Kuina and Tom. They're both older than you. Nami pointed out. Luffy placed Belmir down, her feet sinking into the snow. She spied Chopper and let out a delighted squeal. He's cute. Chopper yelped and darted behind Frankie to hide. Leave him alone, Bella, Nami said. He's our friend, not a stuffed toy. The order was unneeded though, as Belmir was having trouble walking through the snow. It's cold, she shouted, as snow entered her boot. How about I carry you? Luffy asked, kneeling down in front of her, allowing her to climb onto his back. All right, Chopper. Lead the way. Wow, Chopper breathed, as he listened to Nami and Luffy explain what happened 16 years ago and where they were. So you're going to stay here? That's the plan, Nami said, nodding. We've got to meet up with Marco, though, as soon as possible. Milo, our son, is with him, and we'd like to know how he's doing. I've met Milo, Chopper said. Marco stopped by a little while ago. Luffy laughed. So how was he doing? He was brave, Chopper shuddered. He hit Haruto with a snowball. Nami paled at his words. I hope Marco kept an eye on him. That woman can be a little insane at times. The door opened suddenly, Zoro standing in the doorway. Where's Kuina? He asked angrily. Luffy started laughing at the sight of the swordsman. She did say she left a note, Nami commented, holding her hand over her mouth to hide a snigger. Kuina had written where they were on Zoro's forehead, in what looked like permanent marker. I don't know where she is. Zoro stormed out of the hut, muttering something about whipped cream, art supplies, and fire. Chopper stared after the man, and took a sip of his tea. I feel sorry for him. Kuina's quite wild, and what's he got against whipped cream? You should ask Belmir later, Nami said, gesturing to her daughter, who was sitting in front of the fireplace. Kuina poked her head out from behind the couch. Thanks for the save. Don't be thanking me yet. Zoro will always get his revenge, Nami warned. You had better hide the markers. Kuina laughed, ducking as Zoro passed a window. I'll keep that in mind. They all heard Zoro curse loudly, and when they looked out the window, they saw Tom and Blake running from him as fast as they could. The back of Zoro's head was white. You know, I don't know what will cause the most pain. Hitting Haruto with a snowball or hitting Zoro with a snowball. Well, when we find Milo, they can compare notes. The entire ship was tense as a small boat, the same one that had been sent to greet the Whitebeard pirates, traveled towards the marine warship. Many pirates stood with their weapons ready to attack. Swords half drawn, rifles cocked and ready to shoot, fists clenched. As soon as Webster and Taylor had vacated the ship, Marco had ordered everyone to stand by for an attack. Personally, Milo doubted the Marines would attack, they probably having the same reaction as Marco and his crew. Seeing the pirates would probably be a relief, knowing they weren't the only ones that were here. He stood at the stern, watching the progress of the marine ship. He watched the motorboat detach from the side and start heading to shore, the marine ship starting to move a few minutes later. They're coming, he told a nearby crew member, who ran to inform Marco. He came a few minutes later, standing beside Milo. Milo had his pole extended, but loosely gripped in his left hand. Are you alright? Marco asked. I'm fine, Milo said. Are you alright? No, Marco shook his head. I don't like sitting here and doing nothing. Is that a common trait for pirates? 'Cause Mom and Dad were really impatient all the time too. I suppose it is, Marco said. The motorboat arrived at the docks, and Webster quickly made his way over to the pirate ship. He stopped, looking for the ladder, but Marco had pulled it up. Hey, they promised not to fight if you don't. Marco looked down. I don't believe them. You said you wouldn't strike first, Webster called back, desperate to keep the two forces from fighting on the docks. So make sure they keep to themselves, Marco warned, before backing up from the railing and out of Webster's sight. Milo, Webster tried. You're not a part of this, come down and we'll keep trying to get a door open for the high school victims. If Dad can fight sea monsters, then I can fight Marines, Milo said, copying Marco and leaving Webster's sight. He heard him curse. The Marine warship arrived at the docks, its cannons not aiming at the pirates and no one on deck was preparing to fight. Many of the officers were staring at the ship suspiciously, but not acting. Milo's grip on his pole tightened slightly as he made eye contact with one of the Marines on the other ship, and turned away. But then he turned back, recognizing one of the people aboard. Marco. Milo darted away from the railing. Marco appeared in front of him, having jumped from the crow's nest. I recognize one of the people on the other ship. He's a vice admiral. How would you know he's a vice admiral? His name's Gaddy, or something like that. Milo explained. He was at Sabo de Archipelago when I was there. Does he know who you are? No idea. Probably not. I only saw him once, and I don't think he knows me and Dad were related. I wasn't with him when he knocked that guy out. Marco nodded, turning to observe the enemy ship. They don't look like they're ready to fight, he said. But I wouldn't underestimate him, especially when a vice admiral is involved. Well, Haruta said, we're ready to fight if they do plan to attack. Milo sighed. Right now, there is an understanding between you and the Marines. Both of you have no idea where you are or how to get back. But this understanding is stretched. It will break if either side pisses the other off. It's only a question of who will do it first. Marco nodded. That's a very good observation, but I think we will be the ones to strike first. You're going to attack? No. Marco shook his head. I need you to do something for me. Yeah? I need you to inform the crew that we're setting sail as soon as night falls, and heading towards the doorway, Marco said. Milo nodded. All right. But how do you plan to get through? He pointed towards the side of the ship. The scientists are hiding something. We're going to get an answer. Kidnapping? We'll leave him in a dory before we pass through, if I'm right. Okay then, Milo said. I'll go inform the rest of the crew. Here's the plan. Marco leaned in closer to Milo and began speaking. A few minutes later, Milo left and began walking from one group to another, relaying Marco's instructions. Night came, but darkness never fell. The bright floodlights illuminated the docks. But the scientists began packing up their equipment and many of the police and Coast Guard personnel had already left. This meant the pirates had to be quiet. Some of them had severed the ropes holding the ship to the docks, but held on to them to keep the ship from floating away. Namur climbed down the starboard side, opposite the side attached to the docks, and quietly slipped into the water. Milo felt a knot forming in the pit of his stomach as he heard Marco stop behind him. Are you ready? No. Are you still going to do it? Yes, Namur's ready, Haruta whispered. Go, Milo. Milo shoved his fear aside as much as he could and stepped onto the railing. He didn't want to let Marco down. Hey, Vice Admiral Gaddy. The effect was perfect. Everyone on the docks and on the marine ship turned to them. The one camera crew that was still there swiveled towards him as well. This allowed Namur to reach out of the water and grab the nearest scientist, pulling him into the water unnoticed. He's got Taylor, Marco whispered. Keep going. It's Gadding, Gadding shouted back. Who the hell do you think you are? Insulting a Marine? Are you trying to pick a fight? Milo scoffed loudly, keeping up his act. You, fight me? Please, you couldn't take me? He was outright lying right now, but until Namur was back on the ship, he had to keep everyone's attention. What makes you so sure about that? Gadding shouted back, angry that his pride was being insulted. Because my dad took you out with one hit, Milo shouted back. Did he really? Haruta asked. Milo nodded. What proof do you have of that, boy? Gadding shouted. Back on Sabaodyaarchipelego, my dad's the Pirate King. Even from the distance, Milo saw Gadding's face pale. Didn't you tell anyone? The Whitebeards laughed, and Namur appeared over the starboard railing, hauling a dripping Taylor under his arm. Milo jumped down from the rail as the ropes were released and the ship started drifting away from the docks. A wave caught the hull, sending the ship further out into the water. See y'all, Milo shouted. Turn this ship around, Marco ordered, pointing to the open water at the stern. Everyone began scrambling to follow the order, wanting to get back as soon as possible. Let me go, Taylor demanded, struggling in Namur's grip. Marco nodded at Namur, who let the man drop to the ground, landing in a heap. He sat up, glowering at the two pirates standing above him. This is illegal. I don't care, Marco said. We're pirates. We don't follow the law. Marco grabbed Taylor's arm and dragged him to his feet. We're heading straight for the doorway. You had better tell us what happens when we hit it. I have no obligation to do that, Taylor huffed, catching Milo's gaze. No, Marco agreed. You don't have to tell us, but if you don't, you're going to be staying on this ship until we get an answer. Taylor's cheeks started turning red, and Milo just sighed. The man's gaze kept darting towards the ocean, and as they got closer he finally cracked. The worlds are fusing. That caught Milo's attention. What? Damn it, the worlds are fusing. Taylor repeated, as Marco released him. We just thought there was a crack in the skin of the world, and hoped it would mend itself and we never had to worry about it again. But when you guys came through, it got bigger. So you lied to us. Namur stated, it was for our own safety, Taylor hissed. You guys are crazy strong and dangerous. And there are so many people like you in your world. So we can get back? Milo asked. Yes, Taylor spat. You can, but that crack is just going to get bigger and bigger. How do you know the worlds are fusing? Milo demanded. Because of the amount of foreign materials. Taylor detected all over North and South America, especially in the Bermuda areas. Milo crossed his arms. If we sail the same way through, though, we will emerge in our world? I already said yes. Taylor practically shrieked. Yes, 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 yes. Marco stepped away from the hysterical man. Prepare a dory, and get him in it. I got the information I wanted. A couple sailors ran off to prepare the boat, and Milo guided Taylor towards the side. Calm down, you're not a prisoner, we're letting you go. What the hell are you doing with them, kid? Taylor demanded. They're helping me, you live in this world, you can just stay. No, Milo said. You knew that there were people on the other side, and you were just going to let them stay trapped on the other side. 21 people. Most of them kids from the basketball team. I've learned a lot from Marco and the other Whitebeard pirates. I don't like the way you think. It was to protect the rest of the population, Taylor insisted. So you're willing to sacrifice people? Taylor trailed off, not responding to Milo's question. He stayed silent as he was forced into the small dory. Thanks for fixing my phone, Milo said, as two of the crew members began lowering the dory over the side. You might not end up the same place you came through, Taylor warned, as his boat hit the water and detached from the Moby 2. As long as we're back, Marco said, coming over to watch the scientist leave. Taylor didn't respond, grabbing the oars and heading back towards shore instead. I don't like him. Milo snorted. Well, should we hold on? Marco glanced towards one of the navigators. Are we close? Yes, she said. We'll be hitting in 2 minutes. Good. Marco stalked towards the bow and smiled. Where do you think we'll end up? I don't know, Milo answered. I had thought we would end up at the island the school ended up at, but I just hope wherever we land, it helps me find mom and dad. I don't care where we land, as long as we end up back home, Haruta muttered, walking past. Milo felt it before it appeared. A strange tightening in his chest. We're entering, someone called out, and despite the darkness the ship lit up with an unearthly white light. Just like before. The ring formed and descended, faster than last time. Milo grabbed onto the railing as the ship shook slightly, and then suddenly, the light was gone. He blinked, staring around. There was nothing but ocean and darkness around them. Do you think, well, Haruta started, looking around, there's no city. That's a start. It's still dark out, Marco said, so we'll wait for morning before we make any decisions. I want double the people on watch tonight. Aye, sir, Marco turned to Milo. Go to bed, Milo. You don't need to watch tonight. Milo nodded, relieved. He was tired, and really didn't want to stay up thinking about what Taylor had said. He left, making his way to his hammock. His backpack was there. He had forgotten about it. Dumping it on the floor, he climbed in and was asleep within minutes. He woke the next morning to sunlight streaming in the porthole. Blinking a few times, he rolled out of his hammock, landing on his feet. It had taken him a month to be able to do that, and looked out the window. There was an island. Milo raced up to the deck, spotting Izo. What happened last night? Nothing happened last night, Izo informed him. If you're talking about the island, we spotted it an hour ago. Oh, Milo leaned against the railing. Those cliffs look high, he commented as he watched the island draw closer. We're aiming for the docks there, Izo said, pointing. We're going to land and hopefully get the name of the island. Then we can collect our bearings and set off again. Maybe get some maps while we're there. Milo nodded, the plan sounding reasonable. Jozu approached them, grinning. There's someone waving on shore. Milo, can I borrow your spyglass? Milo pulled it out of his pocket. Be careful with it. I will. He placed it to his eye and focused it, aiming at the docks. Well, he said a minute later, I'll be. What is it? Izo asked, as Jozu handed Milo back the spyglass. It's Usopp. Chopper waved goodbye from the deck of the ship as the Thousand Sunny sailed away from the Drum Kingdom. Dalton had been very surprised when Luffy had shown up, following Chopper into the village. Kureha was surprised too, and had come down from the castle to see Chopper off. Belmere was giggling madly as she chased the small reindeer around the grass, actually able to run here. He's cute, she kept claiming, when her parents told her to stop. Eventually, Chopper gave in and let the 12-year-old cuddle with him. That's adorable, Nami grinned, camera in hand. Chopper and Bella, she snapped a picture. Kuina was nowhere to be found, and Nami had found a box of markers shoved in her closet. Out of courtesy for the young swordswoman, she kept them there. The marker still hadn't come off of Zoro's forehead, despite Chopper rubbing several ointments meant to distain skin on the area. Tom and Blake were also avoiding Zoro. The only reason they had escaped his wrath back in the village was by losing the man in the forest. Belmere was the only child not in trouble with the green-haired man, and was taking advantage of the fact by strutting around deck, dragging Chopper around with her. All in all, it was a peaceful day aboard the Pirate King's vessel. The news coup flew over, dropping a newspaper onto the wood. Nami picked it up. I didn't order a new subscription, she mused. I'm not paying for it, she called up to the bird, which ignored her and flew on. What's it got? Frankie asked. Nami opened the paper, marine stuff. Watch out for pirates, protect yourself, avoid shady people. She turned to the last page. Pile of wanted posters. She dropped the paper on the ground, and Belmere abandoned Chopper to grab it. Nami rifled through the papers, a lot of new faces. Hey, isn't this Pepper, from Syrup Village? Luffy looked over Nami's shoulder. Looks like it. I wonder how Usopp is doing. Nami shrugged. We'll be seeing him soon, so we can ask him then. Let's see, she continued shuffling through them. It's Milo. What? Nami held up the wanted poster. Garp said he had a bounty, right? Luffy laughed, taking the sheet from Nami. It is him, huh? His first bounty. Be careful with that. Nami snatched the paper back. It's his first bounty, this is important. I know, Luffy grinned. Let's put it on the fridge. Belmere looked up from the newspaper, several pages folded into origami cranes. Is Milo in trouble? Not with us, Nami said, turning the page so her daughter could view it. With the government. I never thought this day would come, he's such a quiet boy. Congratulations, Robin said, smiling. Now Tom, Blake. I want one of you to get one next, alright? Mom, Blake complained. Tom grinned, I'll get right on that. That's my super sons, Frankie said, placing a large hand on each boy's shoulder. Shoot for as high as you can get it. Simon picked up the paper the Marine handed to him, sitting down and flipping through it. He stopped when he saw Milo's face staring back at him. Tim. The teenager turned towards his father at the sound of his name. Yeah? Simon held out the thin sheet of paper, and Tim took it. What's this? Milo. Andy leaned over Tim's shoulder. What about Milo? Is that a wanted poster? Tim nodded. Milo the Prince. Strange name. Well, his dad said he was a king, right? Andy recalled. Maybe they found out. He nodded at a Marine officer standing nearby. Is there anything else? Simon shook his head. No, I don't see anything else. Except that he's with another pirate crew, the Whitebeard Pirates. Why isn't he with his dad? Tim asked, frowning. I mean, he is really protective of his kids. I don't know, Simon said. Didn't Nami say he fell overboard? Andy snorted. What kind of name is Whitebeard? I mean, that's almost as bad as Blackbeard. Lieutenant, the name is Andy laughed at the stereotypical name. I wouldn't laugh at Blackbeard, he said. Andy shut up. Why not? That name is incredibly common for pirates. Maybe it's not so common here, Simon said. It's not, Figs said. Marshal D. Teach was a ruthless man, but he was once a warlord. War what? One of the 7 warlords, Figs explained. But the only reason he wanted to become one was to gather a crew from impelled down inmates. He succeeded too, unfortunately. It was almost a relief when Straw Hat got rid of him. Andy and Tim grimaced slightly at being reminded of Luffy's past actions. What did he do? Tim asked Blackbeard. Figs sighed. The warlords are pirates who work with the world government. To become one, a pirate has to prove their worth. Since there were a couple spots open, we couldn't turn Teach down when he showed up with a captured Fire Fist. Fire Fist? The 2nd Division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates? Fire Fist Ace. Very powerful. He had the power of the flame fruit. Figs explained. He was the son of the past pirate king and the late brother of the current one. So, we gave him the position. That was our first mistake. Figs shook his head, grimacing. He ended up freeing prisoners from impelled down and rampaging in the War of the Best. He was the one to kill Whitebeard, in fact. And that caused an uproar in the New World. That took years to settle down. Wow, Andy said. That sounds like something out of an adventure story. Or, he trailed off. Figs nodded, leaving the group. That sounds like Luffy's story, Andy whispered. That sounds just like his story. Remember the character he called the Black Man? Blackbeard. He's probably him. You're right, Tim whispered back. So is Fire Fist Luffy's brother? Probably, Andy whispered back.